Reiner.
Welcome back to the FutureProof Advisor podcast. Today, I want to explore something that may be a little controversial. I want to explore the conventional wisdom about how many clients we can serve deeply and how it might be wrong, or at least incomplete, especially in this era of AI. Late 2023, my dad passed away, and he was managing the largest book in our firm, rightfully so. I mean, he built the firm, started the firm, and he had the largest amount of clients of any advisor in our firm. And it was decades of relationships that were built. And what happened in that moment is I had to take on a good chunk of those families and help serve them. And so the amount of families that I was now serving increased basically overnight by 40%. 40% more families. And this was in a time when I was already running our transformation team. We were building AI solutions, producing content like this, already serving families as well. And in a minute, my time was increased, their capacity needed was increased without anything really established at that point. And according to research, you think about like Dunbar's number or anything of that nature, I should have cratered, or every client should have left, or at least down to the number. Dunbar's number says that humans max out at 150 relationships. That is the maximum amount of people we can interact with. And neuroscience backs it up. And so you could probably sit in there and be like, Matt, you're going to argue with Dunbar's number, and you're going to argue with neuroscience, and you're just this guy that talks on the podcast and writes a newsletter. And I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to argue with it a little bit. I am going to argue with it a little bit because I think that I want to look at it from a non-academic lens, but a practical lens. Cognitive load research confirms this as well. And so, but I just continued to believe that the math didn't math, right? As PE firms and venture capitalists say, the math just didn't math. And, the thing is that with all of this research positioned against me, all the academics and brilliance that they have was positioned against me, that in this period of time, in the 18 months since that new wave of clients came, I thrived. That wasn't easy, but I got more referrals than in any period of my career. And I asked myself, and I'm not saying like I am some master or like I'm better than anybody. That's not it at all. Because I was actually amazed at it as well. And so I questioned it. Well, why? Like, was I breaking through a biological ceiling, or was the conventional wisdom missing something? And I knew I wasn't breaking through a biological ceiling. So then it led me to question and research, is the conventional wisdom missing something? And I think that we all take academic research and conventional wisdom, at face value. Too often when you question it, like it's hard to question some of these things because they're so like rich with data, but sometimes you just have to take a practical mentality around it and ask questions and see, is it truly correct, right? Is it always right? Maybe it's right most of the time, but is it always right? I think that the science behind everything makes an assumption about where we are spending our cognitive load. And the assumption, I think, just changed. The world has changed, right? You think back to like the early 1900s, some of these academics were saying that, by the time the 2000s hit, people only have to work like 20 hours a week. The thing is, working 40 hours a week. They didn't take into account that actually humans have a yearning, a greed, and a desire to do more and earn more and provide more. That's not a bad thing. That's just like human nature. And I think that some of these numbers assume that everybody works and acts and everybody's needs are the exact same. And I don't know if that's true. And it also assumes that the world and life is going to continue in the same way that it always has been. And gosh, if you've been following me for long enough, I don't believe that that's true either. Dunbar's number tells us this. The layers of connections, that you can have 5 core relationships. This is maximum emotional intensity. 5 core relationships. So just think about this. If you have 4 kids and a spouse, that's your 5. Unless you don't want to have an emotional connection with your spouse and your kids. So you're out there. You can't have your best friends. That's what this is saying. That if you have 4 kids and a spouse, you're done. Your parents are out. Your siblings are out. That's it. You still believe the number? Let's keep going down. 15 in your sympathy group. So these are weekly or monthly interactions. These are high cognitive demand. All right. So now you can have your sympathy group can include your parents, your best friends, if you have 4 kids and a spouse. So you can get them into your sympathy group. 50 in your social circle, which is moderate intensity, and then 150 stable connections, which are more superficial. But then you think about what social media has done and how that's created connections. Like people have more than 150 connections. They're superficial, but it's more than 150, and it's easier to stay in touch with all them because it's given to you. So does that change Dunbar's number? Does that change the science? And what this all is tracking is the brain's limit for social complexity. There is this metabolic cost for deep work. Like if I'm doing like some deep thinking work, it does hurt. Like I'm exhausted. I don't show up the best for my family when I get home for dinner, right? I don't show up the best for others. Deep client meetings where you're going deep, right? We've talked about in this podcast how the FutureProof Advisor is someone that's asking me info questions, like really getting deeper. Like that there is a metabolic cost to that. There is it's tiring. Active listening requires running a high fidelity simulation of someone else's reality. Like you have to be playing like this ultra crazy simulation in your mind while you're talking to them, while staying present. Like mirroring neurons creates neural mimicry where you're going through the same thing that they're going through, and you have to do that for 3 or 4 times a day with client meetings. That there is exhaustion. There's no doubt about it, right? And so you can't have necessarily 100 deep relationship conversations like right back to back, or you're going to run out of energy. But then the question, where the things get fuzzy for me is what I was just alluding to. If you have a big family or you have a robust friendship circle, you've already chunked out close to your 150. And so where my question then gets to is is the research separating that you can have 150 people that you have as professionals and then 150 for your personal relationships, or is it just 150 total? Because if it's 150 total, then if you got 50 people in your personal life, then you can only have 100 people in your professional life. But then if it's 150 total, then how is our brain determining whether we are using capacity on our personal part of our brain or the professional part of our brain? This is the thing. So is the number total 300? Where is the breakdown that we have? Because if we have a heavy, deep social life, then how are we going to be able to go deep with anybody in our professional life in a service-based business? And so you start to see some of these questions that I wonder is that the research assumes that cognitive capacity is fixed, that you can't train cognitive capacity. And maybe the neuroscientists that listen to my podcast, which is probably 0, but if they are out there, they can help me understand this, is that you can train and grow your brain. You can get it to be more, you can have more endurance. You can create more endurance for yourself. Just like you work out. If you lift 150 pounds on bench press that, you can get to 160 if you work at it, and then 175. If you're not an endurance athlete, but you want to become one, you can by training and working at it. You can do the same. But what if the bottleneck was never the relationships themselves? Yes, the conversations can be tiring. But, if I have 4 conversations a day, 5 days a week, that's 20 conversations, that's 80 conversations a month. That means I can have, I can have 800 in 50 weeks, or whatever that comes out with, in 10 months, whatever it may be. What if all of the cognitive load and the bottleneck was actually around administrative, tactical, and information processing work that surrounds this? Think about it. The planning necessary, the gathering, information gathering, the follow-up, the follow-through. all of these little things that just they kind of they build these like little like nuggets, like little like dings and chips and like little lights that just like go in and like they're just all over the place. And that can become overwhelming in your brain, like having to keep track of all that. The thing is that the advisor, whenever I go and do a keynote, I always ask, and I actually did this recently, and I led with an email example of how AI can help with email, and it kind of spurred a little bit of, um, there's some people that didn't really like that, so I apologize, but I really think that email should be disrupted. I don't think that email provides us value. I don't think that is our value to our clients. But here's the thing: advisors spend 10 plus hours per week on email. If you're working 40 hours, you're spending 25% of your time on email. You have to research the email. You have to draft the email. You have to follow threads on the email. You have to remember context. What if AI took 5 hours of email away? Now, instead of spending 10, you're spending 5. And it's not sending worse emails. It's actually probably handling the research, pulling the context, drafting the initial versions, saving you time from having to write it so you can be, instead of authoring it, you can edit it. If it's 5 hours a week, that's 250 hours a year of freed cognitive load. 250 hours a year. Like, what would you do with that time? Could you serve 3, 5, 10 more families deeply with that time? I think that you could. And that's where I get to this point of like, is the number of relationships, or is it due to what goes into the relationships that now can be changed? I think that when we think about this conversation, I think that many advisors feel that they have to make this choice, whether they're going to be the McDonald's advisor, which nobody would ever say that they are, or the Ritz-Carlton advisor, which everybody said they would be. But what I mean by that is, are they going to be, the volume scale advisor, or are they going to be the deep, low client count advisor? And I don't know if you have to choose. I think that the truth is that you can build both systematically. Scale is standardized processes, high volume, superficial service. That's the McDonald's service. Whereas depth is bespoke service for small groups, and it can't really grow. And the thought is that you're either one or the other. Like, think about the Ritz-Carlton, though. They serve thousands of guests. But when you walk in to a Ritz-Carlton, you feel known, heard, and understood. And how they do this, it's because of the mechanical foundation that they've created. They've created mechanical processes in the background. How do I know it? Is because I've went and studied it. I went and studied it with them. I went to training just to understand what they're doing, because it's so incredible how they do it. And it shows and creates this model that says that advisors can also do it. They have systems that track preferences, that track history, that track different patterns. They have training that empowers frontline people to be deeply human. I mean, they're training. When you are a new team member at the Ritz-Carlton, or they call it new ladies or gentlemen, as they say, the first day you show up, you experience the Ritz-Carlton the way that they want you to make everybody experience it. You valet your car, you come on in. They learn something about you. They take you on a tour, and that thing that they learned about you is showing up for you when you return. Every little thing, every detail is there because there's intentionality. The operational complexity is handled behind the scenes. The person gets to just be personable with the people. They get empowered. They can sit and talk with someone. They can solve problems. They can be creative in every Ritz because they've got the foundation system built. Every person that works there can build and live on that foundation to be human with more people, and they can replicate it to thousands. I mean, we can, as advisors, we can build extremely efficient systems for tactical work. I know it's possible. If we think about first principles, what are the outcomes that we want? What's the best process to get there? How can we do the most behind the scenes to allow our people to be humans? You think about reporting, you think about rebalancing, you think about compliance, you think about follow-up. They're all mechanical. It doesn't mean that humans don't have to be involved in it. At the Ritz, there's still someone helping to evolve it. They still have team meetings every day. They built a culture. They're still humans that need help with it. But if you can start to create those systems intentionally, you now free your team to deliver personal, meaningful connection at scale. And yes, there is still depth doesn't require being small. Depth requires being intentional. And yes, I'm not saying that Dunbar's number is irrelevant and the number is infinite. There's always going to be a number. But I just don't know if the number that we have all been assuming is the number that is the reality of it today in the world that we live. The advisors who thrive aren't going to be the ones without processes. They're the ones that build systems that free cognitive load. They're the ones that build systems that free cognitive load. I didn't absorb 40% more families and just hope for the best and just do it out of sheer grit and determination and being more human. No, I had built already prior to that, not knowing that it was going to happen. I had built systems and processes in my life already. And so when that then happened, I was able to continue to refine my systems and processes to help me. And yes, I was able to involve more team members, but I was able to bring them into a system and a process that was already built and created and worked on prior. And it wasn't a workaround. It was part of a known infrastructure and system. And I pushed my team members to leverage AI. Not as a nice to have, but as a requirement. Not as something to do their job for them, but to empower them to do what their job really is. If they wanted to deliver the level of insight I needed, they had to use and augment themselves in some way. And AI provides that. AI doesn't replace us. It allows us to elevate up. The thing is that my AI, I have tools that help me synthesize information, that help me see patterns. They prepare me for conversations when and if I need it. It helps me research and gather context. But the thing is that I still show up as me. AI helps me prepare for these podcasts. AI doesn't write them. I'm not reading them. AI helps me prepare for it. But as opposed to spending 3.5 hours preparing or an hour and a half preparing for a podcast, I'm leveraging other time that I've already written information, AI to help me organize it, and then I show up as me. Me being me, sharing the information that has been organized for me by something called AI. And that's what it can do for us as an advisor. We still show up as us. And I think that I'm able to provide better perspective. I'm able to go deeper, connect more, gather more insight, have that insight now coordinate with every other insight that I have more deeply and more finitely, as opposed to me putting a note into my CRM and then 10 years later, not remembering what that note said because it doesn't have any relation and I have to scroll for 10, 15 pages just to get to that last one. That's not knowing more about our clients because we're not using that information. And there's really a 2-step framework to help get to this point. First, we have to focus on standardizing and automating tactical work. Use AI as a workflow integration, right? Build systems where marginal cost of serving a new client approaches zero, right? Like, how do we build these systems that can help us to where if we bring someone on, it's not going to be like a detriment or it's going to impede us or be a hurdle to our new time. Maybe that's like how we get our new client information sheet. It goes into our CRM automatically. Our CRM automatically reads it and knows what account paperwork needs to be and sets up tasks already for that, right? Now that means that the marginal account to just get that set up is very minimal at that point. And be intentional about what you do with your free time. What I see so often, we've talked about this many times, is that people free up their time with AI and they say, well, gosh, I feel I'm busier than ever. Because what they do is they go back in their email and they write more emails. And instead of having 10 hours, now they have 15 hours. And they're like, gosh, I'm just doing so much more email. Because they're researching them more deeply and sending more emails. It's like, you've got to be intentional what you're going to do with that free time. Are you going to go deeper with clients? You're going to call them, be more meaningful with them, or not? And that's step 2 is depth design. Are you use that free time for non-scalable things? What cannot be automated? Do that. Do that. Manual, personalized, extraordinary efforts that create deep connections, right? Invest in qualitative skills, psychology, understanding it, emotional intelligence, things that AI can't do. That's where we spend our time. That's where we should be dedicating time when AI frees it for us. And when we do that, we start to see impact. Maybe not right away, and you can't do it all in a day, but over time, you start to shift the dynamic. The service model becomes deeper, the value provided becomes greater. You're able to serve more families. Your cognitive load somehow expands beyond what Dunbar's number is. And the depth that you have can go deeper. There is a world where you can serve more people and go deeper with them if you're intentional about it. We assume that this cognitive capacity is fixed. We assume tools just help us do the work faster. Well, heck, if that's the case, then what people thought back in the early 1900s are going to be right. By 2100, nobody's going to have to work because AI is just going to do all the work for us. So where does we want to work? We're not going to work 40 hours. We're going to work 10 hours. But I'm telling you, that's not going to be the case. We're going to work 40 hours, and what we're going to do with those 30 hours? We're going to be more human. We're going to be more human. We're going to have more of an emotional presence. We're going to show up. Like I said, human relationships are still, like, there are boundaries. And Dunbar's number is a real thing. But I think that the curve has shifted. I think that there's been technological advancements. There's been, advancements in how our world is economically, socially. And we can serve more people at a deeper level than we could 5 years ago. And it's not because biology changed, but because infrastructure around biology has changed. AI is redistributing cognitive load. So the question really isn't, do we choose scale or do we choose depth? It's, are we being intentional about building systems that let us do both? Add processes, add more clients, leverage AI to help us. Those are the ones that are going to succeed. It's the ones that are going to say, well, they add clients without AI processes. They who build AI tools without changing how they spend their time. I think that those are the ones that are going to fail because they're going to start to see, well, yeah, look, Dunbar's number is right. I can't add more clients, and AI is not creating me more scale over time because you must create processes and you must be intentional with what your time you're using creates. So I always ask, like, what would you change if you had 5 more hours a week of free cognitive load? Serve more families, go deeper with more families. You make that choice. That's completely up to you. Or would you just use that time to do more of the work that you're doing already? The ceiling, I think, is higher than we thought, but we must be intentional about it. And that's a wrap. Thank you. Thank you for spending time with me, as always. And remember, like the episode, share it. Tell me what you agree with or disagree with. I love to hear, not to argue, but I think that everybody should share, where this may be missing the mark, and that's okay. But I hope you enjoyed it. Share it with who you have in your community. Let's keep building this community together. You are all the reason I do this. So let's all go out there and be part of the change that positively impacts our industry. Stay well, be well, keep on exploring.